In the latest episode, we looked at some of the ways the Norsemen adapted old pagan beliefs into early Christian writings. Today, we're going to take a closer look at one of the most important figures from pre-Christian Scandinavia. I'm talking about a man who may have been called Onund, Einar, or Ivar. He was also known as Ragnar Lothbrok, a legendary Viking warrior and king of Denmark. The name Ragnar means army or horde, and Lothbrok means of the big loaf, presumably a large ceremonial loaf like those used in the old Germanic initiation rituals. We know from the sagas that he was one of the first Vikings to raid England. And if the sagas are to be believed, he had a rather eventful death, being thrown into a pit of poisonous snakes and then finally executed by King Ella of Northumbria. But what does archaeology have to say about this infamous Viking? Well, unfortunately, very little. There are actually very few archaeological sources connected with Ragnar or his sons, and none of them prove conclusively that Ragnar was a real historical person. All of the evidence comes from two places, Denmark and England. In Denmark, there is a single coin minted in Birka, which shows a raven holding a battle axe in its beak, which may allude to Ragnar. There's also a rune stone in Vaster Gotland that has the inscription, "In memory of Ragnar, son of Gorm," and another rune stone at Hoby in Fionia reads, "To Ragnar and his sons, a victory monument raised over the two brave warriors." But these are just two short inscriptions, nothing more. Then across the sea in England, we have a couple of place names, Raven Scar and Blood-Sworn Cliff. The story goes that Ragnar gave the cliff this gruesome name after killing Ella's sons and then dipping his bread in their blood. However, this is almost certainly a later addition to the saga, and it reflects a well-known motif in Viking culture where heroes dip their bread in the blood of their enemies. So is Ragnar Lothbrok a real historical person? Well, it's possible, but there is no archaeological evidence that proves it. However, this is not unique to Ragnar. This is the problem with trying to study legendary figures like Ragnar Lothbrok, because they appear so late in the written sources, long after the events they describe are supposed to have taken place. They are part of an oral tradition that developed over many generations, and there is usually so much time between the supposed historical event and the writing of the saga that it is impossible to trace back the source material to an actual event. And archaeologists are always going to be playing catch-up. Okay, so what about his son? Surely there must be some archaeological evidence for Ivar the Boneless, right? Well, hold on to your horned helmets, everybody, because we have a silver penny minted by King Aeli of Northumbria. It was minted in 866 AD, just 5 years before Ragnar supposedly kicked the bucket. One side shows a ship with a dragon head prow and the inscription Ael Northumbria Rex, meaning King Aela of Northumbria. The other side shows a hand holding a standard and the inscription IC Elby, which likely means victory belongs to Isle. Now, it might seem pretty far-fetched that a Viking prince would turn up in Northumbria in the year 862 and mint his own coins. But remember that the whole point of the sagas is to glorify the Danish kings, so it is perfectly possible that they left out a little detail or two. Still, I think we can safely say that there was probably some truth behind the legend. Maybe that Ragnar led a group of Vikings into Northumbria and pillaged the countryside, or perhaps even that he died there. But a literary mission? That seems a bit unlikely. Now, before I continue, I want to say that while it is impossible to find direct archaeological evidence for most legendary people, there is one exception, and that is the famous Viking warrior queen, Lagertha. She is mentioned in both the Ingvar saga and the Vers saga, and according to the stories, she was the daughter of a Swedish king, wife to another king, and the mother of a third, and each of these three husbands meet their end at her hand. Is there any truth to these tales? Well, maybe. There is a potential runic inscription that mentions her at Solsta, Sweden, and it reads, Lagertha, the shield maiden, made this stone in memory of her brother. And if this really is Lagertha, then we know that she could read and write, which was fairly unusual for women at the time, let alone a shield maiden. But while the stone is undoubtedly connected with her, I doubt that it will ever be possible to uncover the truth behind the legends. But let's move away from legendary figures and talk about something tangible, like this brooch, for instance. This exquisite piece of jewelry was found in 1939 during excavations at the Viking burial site of Galahus in Denmark. It dates back to around the year 950, and it was found alongside the skeleton of a woman who was buried in a magnificent gown, along with several pieces of jewelry and a pouch containing over 200 Arabic dirhams. The brooch is decorated with 3 birds, a snake, a fish, a knotwork design, and a mysterious Z-shaped symbol. Birds and snakes are relatively common symbols in Viking art, but this particular style is unique, and I wasn't able to find any examples quite like it anywhere else. If you have any thoughts about what the Z-shaped symbol might represent, please let me know down in the comments section below. Another incredible example of Viking art is the rock carvings at Rök. These are found in a small village in southern Sweden and date back to around the year 800. The rune stones are covered in a variety of different images, including dragons, serpents, animals, and ships. The inscription tells the story of a man named Rarik and his journey to the east. It is also one of the longest runic inscriptions in Sweden, and it includes some phrases that have never appeared on any other runic stone, so it provides us with an invaluable insight into the Viking mindset. Speaking of mindsets, let's spend a moment looking at a coin hoard. These were discovered in 1985 on the island of Gotland. It contained 171 Arabic silver dirhams dating back to between 793 and 867. This is very interesting for a number of reasons. First, it shows that the Vikings were active traders and had connections all the way to the Middle East. Second, it demonstrates that there was a high demand for Islamic currency in Scandinavia, and it likely played a major role in financing Viking expansion. And third, it proves that Viking hoards rarely contained silver. You see, there is a popular misconception that Vikings stashed away their treasure in secret hiding places, but most of the time their idea of a savings account was burying a bunch of stuff in a bog and then building a giant burial mound on top. That way, their wealth could be protected by magic and guarded by their ancestors. So if you're going to hide your loot in a bog, why bother burying some crappy silver coins when you can get loads of valuable Arabic cash? That's like burying Monopoly money. And hoarding bog bodies like this one were often sacrificed victims whose bodies were cast in a mold of clay before being interred in the bogs. Finally, I want to show you this neat little modern-day artifact. It comes from Burka, where archaeologists uncovered the remains of a wooden building that once served as a large warehouse. Inside, they found traces of plant pollen and seeds from all around the Baltic Sea. But most fascinating of all, they found fragments of board games. Now, these are the oldest complete games of their type ever found in Scandinavia, and they likely date back to the 10th century. Here you can see one of the dice bags with its leather drawstring. And here are the dice themselves made from animal bone. And here is the game board showing the routes around the Baltic Sea. And here are some of the playing pieces. So how did the game work? Well, the rules are a bit complicated, so I won't bore you with the details, but basically it worked like this. Each player chose a token and then tried to race their opponent around the Baltic Sea by throwing the dice and landing on various ports. Some ports allowed players to collect resources such as grain and wood, but others were dangerous and could cause you to lose everything. Now, there is a lot that we don't understand about the game, such as the significance of the yellow dots. Was it a port, or a resource, or just a random hazard? We simply don't know. And with that, we come to the end of another episode. Let me know what you thought about this installment of Echoes of the Past. Thanks to my patrons for helping me keep this channel running, and shout out to History for making videos like this one possible. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my new podcast available online. Until next time, it's me. Stay safe, everybody.